Hello, this is James Hunter, and today I'm going to be speaking with Taylor about Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch. And I have some questions for Taylor. And before I turn it over to him with my first question, I just got some stuff, basically that from the internet, Google, Wikipedia, and some other sources about Bigfoot. For people who might be on my channel watching this video, some of you know a lot of this already. Obviously, you clicked on the video, maybe because you know a lot about Bigfoot. Some of you maybe just are learning or curious. So generally, Bigfoot is most often described as a large, muscular, and bipedal ape-like creature covered in black, dark brown, or dark reddish hair. And some descriptions estimate a height of approximately 6 to 9 feet, with some descriptions having the creature standing as tall as 10 to 15 feet. Now, reportedly, some observations describe Bigfoot as more man-like, with reports of a human-like face. Bigfoot also is commonly referred to as Sasquatch, and purportedly ape-like creatures said to inhabit the forests of North America, with other creatures of relatively similar descriptions are reported to inhabit various regions throughout the world, such as the skunk ape of the southeastern United States, the Almas Yeren, and Yeti in Asia, and the Australian Yowie, all of which are kind of like Bigfoot-like type creatures. And real quick, like most people have heard about the Patterson, Robert Patterson footage video, and so on. So you've probably seen that before. Most people are not a stranger to that. So I'm going to ask Taylor some questions. You know, we're going to kind of flow pretty flexible here, and we're going to just kind of have a good conversation. Okay. So Taylor, you know, you had a Bigfoot or Sasquatch type encounter before, and maybe you can just share your experience, and then we'll kind of just go from there with some of our questions. And maybe you might want to give your definition, right? I just gave a general one. You might have other ideas about Bigfoot.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty outdoorsy my whole life. Kind of grown up in super rural areas, and I've had some experiences that I never considered to be something like Bigfoot. Um, More or less, a lot of the experiences in my younger years, up until actually this year, I had something pretty drastic happen. I kind of chalked it all up to maybe someone lost their exotic pet. I mean, it's not unlikely. So it's kind of what I've had in the past. Nothing crazy. But recently, I mean, I live on the backside of over 170,000 acres of forest, and only 60,000 acres you're allowed to even go on legally. So there's a lot of untouched land. So we tend to go camping, more along the lines of like backpacking overnight areas. We use a little GPS. We don't go where people normally go. We just walk out, find a really cool spot, and use GPS to get home. So yeah, recently we found something that we call the boneyard out in this big part of the forest. It's between two swamps, and that's when we had the first scream encounter happen, and that was intense. We called it the boneyard because we assumed that there might have been like a Florida panther. We found a lot of like boar carcasses. Found a lot of like deer carcasses. The weird thing was about the boar, I noticed that on the skeleton, a lot of the necks were broken. That vertebrae that connects directly to the base of the skull was snapped off.
Yeah.
So sounds crazy, we spent the night. We put a couple cameras up around us because, you know, if Bigfoot isn't real, we've got nothing to worry about. So we were just out there. And that's when we hear the screaming. It sounded like around 12 p.m. Sounded like a woman. We kind of got out of our hammocks because we thought somebody was being murdered in the forest. This woman was just screaming for her life. And then it just kind of started to deepen into the sound of like tires screeching, like a truck just burning out. But there was no differentiation. It just from woman directly into the tire screech sound. And that was intense. Yeah, that was the first time. Second time, we moved about 10 miles away from that spot, and the same thing happened, except there were three different creatures screaming from three different parts of the forest in a circle around us. And we got up, and I said, you know, by this point, I'd already looked up Sasquatch and learned a little bit. I said, I think we're being watched. Because in the beginning of the night, we heard what was not the sound of an owl. It sounded like a grown man, just in the edge of the forest, just going whoo, whoo. Worst impression of an owl I've ever heard. But we're 5 miles back off a trail that we use GPS just to find. So there's the odds of a person being there are slim to none. So followed by the screaming started wood knocking. It was always tap, tap, tap. And then behind us would be the same response. And then to the right would be the same response. The screamings, we had one scream that sounded like a grown man. We had one scream that was higher pitched and one that sounded like a little kid. 3 different parts around us, about 100 feet out, maybe 200 feet out, around 1 to 2 a.m. And then the pine cones started coming from the forest line. And eventually it all kind of calmed down until 4 in the morning. We just went to sleep because, again, we just discussed, me and my friend, that, hey, we can't hike out of here. There's no way. We're out here for the stay. Like we cannot hike in the dark this far. So we went to sleep, believe it or not, just kind of chalked it up to whatever. It stopped. We're good. And then my hammock about 4 a.m. dropped down. Boom. And the tree above me that I was tied to was moving. And I just froze because all I heard was just. And I said, oh no. And by the time I moved and I yelled to my friend, all I heard, my tree bounced back up. Hammock was flat, and just all you heard was the palm branches below you. So stayed up until about 8 a.m. Sun started coming up. The fog was beginning to clear. And we just lay there, and we hear. It sounds ridiculous. Even after all of that, hiking out of there, I thought someone had maybe an escaped pet monkey. Because at 8 a.m., full sunlight, all we hear is the sound of a squirrel, followed by like woo 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 woo, like a zoo monkey. That went on for 20 minutes, and when we got up, it stopped. So we just kind of hiked out like nothing happened. And my buddy who's definitely never ever been a believer of anything like that, after that had to come home and tell the family because he's scared to believe. It's just kind of I've been back. We've developed a sort of a relationship with the 3 separate ones out there. And I've discovered recently that on my backside of the forest, there's another one. So I know of 3 separate areas where they're at.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that a lot of my opinion of experiences where people have interactions in nature with things like this, we'll talk about the noises and the tap tap and what that implies to me is some type of intelligence as far as it's intentional, maybe it's purposeful, it's not just random, like a woodpecker, for example, is just pecking on a tree. I got woodpeckers where I live at, but sometimes it's not when we're expecting things. For instance, you mentioned if Bigfoot isn't real, then we have nothing to worry about. So we're comfortable. I live where there's a lot of animals. And the thing is, whether it's deer, bucks, does, raccoons, javelina, possum, just pick an animal, right? It's typically when, in my opinion, I think there's an energy with our awareness of ourselves in relationship to nature. So if I try to intentionally walk out to my lot, those deer know, and they'll start kind of like their instincts kick in. They might back off. Versus I'm not even thinking about anything. I'm just kind of flowing on by. It's like they're there, I'm there, and I look up, and holy smokes, there's a deer 3 feet from me, and oh wow, there you are, right? Because there was no intention. I wasn't setting any intentions. I'm just out there. So I think a lot of this stuff, all animals have anxiety. We all have fight or flight. We all have instinct, and there's variability with this. So I think if our belief is, well, there is no Bigfoot, there's nothing to worry about, then yeah, your energy is different. You're not expecting nothing. And you hear a lot of people make these comments. Well, how come nobody ever gets a perfect photo, right? They call it blob squatch. It's like a blurry photo. Or like the Patterson film, it's a little bit shaky, and then he captures about 59 seconds worth of footage and so on. So I've always had thoughts on this. There's been things I found in nature that were cool that I wanted to video. And there you are, you're trying to get your phone out. Everybody has a video camera these days. So yeah, whether it's the moon or something, and sometimes you can capture pretty cool stuff. But I can see, in my opinion, if anyone who ever happened upon an actual Bigfoot experience, I imagine that could feel pretty overwhelming, surreal. And then you're trying to keep your composure to even try to get a picture. So I can appreciate that. So these noises, right? The tap, tap, maybe intentional movements, because animals sometimes may have intentional behavior, whether it's, I don't know, a bobcat or a mountain lion is stalking an animal. Animals can be pretty intelligent. But the thing is, one of the questions I'm going to ask you actually has to do with, this is my second question. A lot of assumptions may be made about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, when trying to explain or answer many questions about him or her or it, right? There can be the Patterson Sasquatch, I believe they believe it's a female, right? Because of the breasts. Yeah. So that's right. So maybe, what are some of the assumptions that are made here when we try to explain these phenomenon, right? So what are perhaps some common assumptions and or misunderstandings about Bigfoot or Sasquatch in your opinion? So let's maybe talk about that, because people talk about stuff. Well, how come we don't find bones or a body? Now, elephants, you hear about elephant graveyards, right? Elephants are fairly intelligent, but to the extent, let's say Bigfoot is a residual hominid or a pre-human type of a creature, which, by the way, would be very robust and huge. I've watched videos about the depiction of pre-humans. They'll put a primate head on a body that looks very human still. And this person that I watched a video about was saying this is very disingenuous, because these actual skeletons they look at, the bones are very robust compared to regular human. That body would be a lot more robust than what they show in some of the artwork, right? So to the extent, if it is a pre-human that has some reasonable amount of intelligence that understands, hey, it's not a good idea to be maybe discovered or found out. These people are going to exploit us, or maybe they have that vibe, right? So to the extent there is that intelligence, maybe there is some intentional behavior to not have anything found. But nature by itself has a way of getting rid of things, right? Body decomposes, animals, scavengers. It's not that easy just to find a deer skeleton. And I have a lot of deer where I live at. It's not like I'm just hiking and there's a deer skull and a fully intact deer skeleton. It don't work that way. Not saying it's not possible, right? But what are maybe some of your opinions about how the mainstream or people, how they view a Sasquatch or Bigfoot? Maybe we look at it the wrong way. You have some people that say, well, maybe Bigfoot is a bit paranormal too, right? We're assuming he's totally terrestrial. Maybe there's some extraterrestrial connection here, right? Yeah. So what's your opinion about some of these assumptions or maybe misunderstandings?
Well, I think that, anything could be misunderstood with lack of knowledge or proof. Sometimes when people bring up, well, no one has a body, but how can you say this much? Well, if I discovered an octopus before anyone else in the world, and I told you I found a creature that has several brains, changes its color, the texture of its skin, the shape of its body, and meanwhile it just feels like Play-Doh, it would sound extraterrestrial. It would sound mystical, and no one would believe me. But we already caught one, so that's real.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could all be misunderstood. The mystical part could just be that, they think they remove their own bodies after they pass away. Or it could be that they're like orangutans, which commonly find caves and hide themselves so that they can die in a hidden place.
Yeah.
Where I'm at, there's cave systems out here. They go, I've known someone who's only ever been able to make it 14 levels deep.
Yeah.
And who knows about the ones that we haven't seen yet. I think it's a matter of time.
Sure. Cats will go off to die when they're old. If you're not keeping an eye on them, they'll kind of just go off and die. The thing that's interesting is, as far as, I've watched different documentaries, and again, about these assumptions, even with our technology, how come we can't just go out there and boom, here it is. Here's a smoking gun. I was watching footage, I believe it was Alaska, and as a plane is just flying over a lot of this territory that's not really, occupied very much. So it just looks like a carpet of trees. You can't even see below them, right?
Yeah.
So there's so much territory that's still reasonably uncharted, or not really being preoccupied a whole lot. It doesn't have a lot of human traffic. So there are things that can be said about that. We do know that they discover new species, right? Quite a bit. So a lot of this, you hear people saying, well, the government, for example, does know there's a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch, but they don't want to be on the record about it because then it might change our narrative of how we think about ourselves. And then also they can have a bunch of people out in the woods with rifles and stuff. It's open season or something like that. Who knows? There's a lot of, like, in other words, does the benefit of saying, yes, this is true, does that benefit outweigh any said liability they might see, whether it's controlling a narrative about our existence? Similar thing with UFOs, alien life from other planets. Well, if we say that exists, then that changes everything, our narrative of who we are here. Does that totally shake up the world? I mean, people kind of like maybe get a bit nihilistic, right? Nothing matters, right? All this stuff we believed before, right? So this tight controls, if you will, on narratives for a lot of different reasons. So I hear people talk about that, right? Maybe there's reasons we don't have maybe the smoking gun stuff that's out there, but just probabilities, right? I mean, statistics. Go ahead.
I believe a lot more people have more to lose from the discovery of Sasquatch than they would have gained from it. With the exception of, if there was anything to offer to Big Pharma, would be the only way that anyone would discover it. Then you have a rights issue.
Yeah, you hate money, right? If you can make money off it.
I mean, the lumber industry makes about $90 billion a year, not including any other products but the sale of lumber.
Yeah, or if you could weaponize Bigfoot, right? The military would want them, but maybe.
Then, it'd be a rights issue as well. We have PETA now; they'd be all over it.
Yeah, sure. So who knows what things and how it's compartmentalized or described, and so on. So this description, it's a bipedal ape. It's maybe a hominid, early pre-human. Some people say, I've heard some documentaries will talk about maybe Bigfoot is interdimensional. I saw a convention of Bigfoot believers, and there was one person who was trying to say Bigfoot is interdimensional, and you could see all the other people in the crowd looking at him like, hey, you're kind of like making the rest of us look bad. Nothing against people who believe in interdimensional type of realities. I'm not saying that, but there's so many angles, I guess, with the explanations for Sasquatch. But really, what does it say about us, though, if there is a Sasquatch? What does it say? Just like, what would it say about us if a UFO landed on the White House, the lawn, right, and said, here we are, right? What does it say about us then? Can people handle that, or does maybe the powers that be underestimate us? For me personally, I don't think that would bother me to know there's a Bigfoot or that UFOs are real. That doesn't bother me, but that's me.
Yeah. I don't think it would change many people's lives, honestly. Some people are, I would say, if it was a mystical being, it might drastically change your life. You consider religion, you consider culture, if that's the case. Same thing as with aliens. But if it was, let's say, if it's just even something outrageous as the missing link between humans and apes, I don't even think that would change your life as much as if it was this mystical being.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. We think about whether it's a mystical being or, the early humans, the missing link, if you will, perhaps between us, between pre-humans, and then you get a human being. There's actually a video. It's still on YouTube. I think it was taken down and then somebody re-uploaded it. And I've seen that happen several times over the years. So the man's name is Lloyd Pye. He's passed away. He's deceased. But he has a video called "Everything You Know Is Wrong." And so he goes through a methodical process of showing the fossil records leading up to a human being, and then you get to the last one in the chain, which is a hominid type creature, and then all of a sudden you have a human being. Skeletal structure is drastically different, way different. As far as everything just changes, right? And so they talk about that missing link. his theory is that there's intervention from other worlds, right? Otherworldly intervention where they essentially the alien DNA plus hominid, and then you get a human being, right? Kind of like a hybrid. And you've heard stuff like this on History Channel and other things these days, but this guy's video is out there for a while before some of this stuff he's seeing on TV. So to the extent, okay, let's say that's true, then that would explain a lot of things, because there's a book, I think it's called The Naked Ape, and we're the naked ape, because we are the most ill-equipped mammal or animal to live on this earth if left to our own devices. You ever watch on Discovery Naked and Afraid? Those people try to survive. Yeah, man, they get torn up out there, and even they still give them like a little loinscloth, and they'll give them like each one takes a toll. Man, we're not equipped to deal with radiation from the sun. Our skin totally get burned up. I mean, our fingernails could grow, but it's not like we have these claws like freaking bears or something, right? So we're the least equipped to defend ourselves. We are dramatically outmatched in strength. Like a chimpanzee. If you ever seen a chimpanzee with mange, there's a picture of a photo of a chimpanzee. Has mange. You see how muscular they are?
It's huge.
Yeah, they would rip a human being apart. So what allowed us to be the dominant species is our intelligence, our frontal lobe, perhaps, executive function, the ability to plan, organize, think ahead, the future. Our awareness of our mortality is something maybe we have more of than regular animals, perhaps. They have instinct, fight or flight, to not die. All animals have fear, including us. But we're at another level, and this just suddenly changes. But there's a trade-off. We have weaker bodies as a result, right? Yeah, we can work out and do strength and conditioning, and relative to within our own species, be pretty strong relative to each other, but relative to the chimpanzee, right, we'll get smoked every day. So there's this huge trade-off. We get an upgrade of intelligence, and now we control the whole world. We run the world. The species does. You can look at biblical references, right? Man was given dominion over the world. So ancient alien theorists will say, well, that's referring to us being by default the stewards of the earth, because now we are the most intelligent being on this planet. Yeah. So there's a trade-off: upgrade in intelligence, but a downgrade in our physicalities, right? So this is what gets people to be skeptical about this fossil record, where you go from a very robust hominid that would be freaking a beast, physically strong, and then all of a sudden you get a physical downgrade physically, and then a tremendous upgrade in intelligence.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense, because, like you said, I mean, you couldn't drop us off just anywhere in the world and expect us to survive. No. It's just we don't even swim fast.
No. Yeah. And so lots of things to be said about, this is, to me, in my opinion, this is an existential issue. Who are we in this world? And then when you hear things about Bigfoot, a lot of people can feel threatened by that. I say this in other videos, and I don't say it to take jabs at people that have a religious belief. I don't. I'm respectful that people can have a variety of beliefs. So, for example, I grew up, we grew up Christian, so I would go to church, and you're taught with, hey, there was a man named Jesus. He walked on water. He rose from the dead after being crucified. He rose other people from the dead. He turned water to wine, and did all these amazing things, right? He even multiplied fish, a few loaves of bread and fish, to feed thousands of people. So people are comfortable with that. Yeah, I believe that 100%. If it's somebody who is Muslim, they believe Muhammad flew to the moon on a winged horse, right? So people have their religious beliefs. But then when you say, hey, do you think it's possible there could be something out there that's like a bipedal, what we call Bigfoot, Sasquatch? And then they can be very dismissive. Oh, that's baloney, conspiracy stuff. There's no evidence for that, right? So it's a double standard. Yeah. So you have a book that tells you about your religion, which you have faith in it because that's part of your culture you grew up with. But when you have things that are called lore or legend, like Bigfoot and all these other things, Yeti, people can be very dismissive. And I always found that very interesting, the double standards with how people can maybe suspend their criteria for things that are their culture that they feel comfortable with, but then have a different set of rules for other things in culture, right? Like the Bigfoot. So Bigfoot, you have footprints, castings. There's this one guy on a document. I think he's an anthropologist, expert, and he was impressed with some of the casts. He didn't believe they were fakes, and yeah, there are some that are fakes. And to be honest, there are people who fake stuff. We know that that's been found out as fake. So you do have those people that they have fake. They submit stuff as evidence, whether it's video, photo, footprint, fake. But then there's other ones that are deemed more credible by people that actually investigate it. So you do have that. But the point is, at least there's present things happening as far as tangible stuff trying to be shown as evidence, right? So you have witness testimonies, a lot of people. So everybody is either everybody's a liar, right? Is it black or white? Or perhaps there's something to this. It's called consensus validity. You have enough testimonies and there's something to this, because a lot of the evidence they use for the Bible, they say eyewitness testimony in the New Testament. They had all these witnesses, right? So that's their evidence. So if you have a lot of people, witnesses, then where's this double standard? Because eyewitness testimony, it is admissible to an extent, and yes, it can be problematic, but the point is that there's these double standards. I think you get what I'm saying, right? What do you think about some of these double standards with what people feel comfortable with versus how they can be dismissive about possibilities of things?
Well, I think, one thing, Bigfoot doesn't offer you any promises. I mean, there's no benefit to think, oh, I believe in Bigfoot. Well, why? Well, I don't know. I mean, my friend says it's there. You don't get anything from it. The other thing too, I mean, what people I haven't heard talk about lately is the amount of people who actually have had encounters is very low in comparison to the average person. And that doesn't account for the people who don't want those encounters, who are terrified. Like the old lady who would have banging on her house and seeing it taking stuff out of her garden. She would call anybody to get that out of there. So I would say at least half the amount of research that could be done isn't being done.
Yeah. Well, if they were to be aggressive with it, with all the tools, resources, and devices available, right? You made a very, very astute observation. Bigfoot doesn't offer you anything, right? So that's right. That's very interesting. I appreciate that because, religious beliefs and gods, that there's this there's promise, or there's these expectations, or it's a relationship that's based on maybe a contingency plan, right? So I have a faith, a belief, so it gives me comfort. So I'm going to be more inclined to support that. Whereas Bigfoot is more of this kind of just entity, if you will, a phenomenon loosely associated perhaps with some beliefs, but maybe it's not a clearly defined thing unless somebody starts a Bigfoot religion, right? That thus saith Bigfoot, right? The 10 Commandments of Bigfoot.
I think there actually probably are if you look hard enough.
But I like that. That is a very good observation. So good job with that. I mean, Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, if you found
anything,
it could also mean that you have an obligation, and not everyone likes an obligation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's right. So we're more likely to be committed to things perhaps that make us feel less anxious, more comfortable. So Bigfoot, I get that. And for some people, like Bigfoot, UFOs, maybe for them on a subconscious level, it might be the opposite. Not that it offers them something, but maybe it'll take something away from them, right? Yeah. That's right, because I was taught to believe that humans are special. We're the center of the universe. It's all about us. So if I consider these other beliefs, that's not offering me something. That's taking away my narrative that makes me feel comfortable. Yeah.
That's the same thing I was taught too. I grew up a Christian, and it was like, well, why aren't there aliens? And the answer, to me at least, was always, we're the only ones, because Satan would go after them instead of us, or both. And then we would know. And I'm like, well, if aliens are found, that ruins my religion. But that was something my father probably exclusively said, but that's how I was raised to believe.
Yes, sir. It's a good deal. So I'm just curious, when you share your kind of your experience with the encounter of the noises, the tapping, the pine cones being thrown. I can't think of too many animals that want to throw pine cones. I mean, raccoons have opposable thumbs, hands. They can open doors. I had a raccoon try to open a door upstairs to my house. I thought a burglar was trying to break in. And
Yeah.
I looked through the curtain and he's on the rail and he's reaching over, like trying to turn it. And I thought it was the darndest thing, man. But as far as to be intentional, right? Because think about it, most animals, unless they're starving to death, are not going to seek out a human
Yeah.
and try to get you. They're going to probably leave you alone, or unless they feel threatened, like a female bear of cubs, right, might become aggressive.
Right.
But
And
most, yeah,
reminds me of something
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Is a lot went on in that spot. Like you said, a female with cubs is interesting because I have since gone back and we have found a footprint, just a little tiny one, about a size 8 women's shoe, in like 2 inches of mud, way back there, same
yeah,
spot. But I think, it is intentional. A lot of the stuff since that encounter, I have researched my area and found people who've had encounters, and every one of them has been negative, all the way to the Native Americans encounters. It all talks about a big black-haired Sasquatch either takes people, and then you go to the common day, like current day common accounts where, oh, we get chased out, we get screamed at, stuff gets thrown, it's very aggressive, they get charged. And here I am, I can't leave, I can't run. Most of these people run, so I just stayed. But the difference also was I don't bring guns. Most of the people out there, almost every one of them that had a negative encounter, had open rifles.
yeah.
Why did it stop when it reached my tree and not charge aggressively, snuck up, and then left? And on top of the fact, there might be a small one. We also bring apples all the time now. I have a younger sister. She's about 20. And she was like, do you think I could, go with you? And I was a little nervous, but I said, you know what? We'll figure it out. We'll bring apples, because the last time the apples were gone. And we put them about 10 feet up in a wicker basket up in a tree. And they're all gone within 2 hours. So we brought a bunch and we spent the night. And instead of getting screamed at, the apples were gone. And we were woken up by actually a pretty pleasant noise. I'm not sure what it was. It sounded like 6 people making the same tone at the same time. It goes, ooh, and then it went for like 45 seconds at least. But it was just like multiple voices. And then we had a very peaceful night. So I think that I'm no longer perceived as a threat, but I never would have known if I left. And maybe they don't like the weapons.
Well, animals in certain colonies, I forget what they're called, like prairie dogs, like on Nat Geo. Well, they'll have watch out. They'll have some that they get up high and all they do, they're lookouts.
Right.
And they will make noises to let the rest of the colony or the tribe say, hey, there's a predator. So then everybody kind of will hide out or protect themselves. There's been instances where birds in the forest will let out noises to warn other animals, or they'll make a noise to alert, hey, there's a predator. So a lot of these are precaution or protective measures. So my point is, it's more defensive than it is an aggressive behavior. So throwing a pine cone is, in my opinion, odd, because if you're looking at exclusively an animal phenomenon, maybe a chimpanzee, maybe an orangutan, could they throw something just to be mischievous? I've seen videos of small tree monkeys pulling the tail of a dog and thinking it was funny, and then the dog's like going after the monkey, like being mischievous. Is it possible? Yeah, I guess possible, but to the extent, are those indigenous or live where you're at? It's not like you got chimpanzees and orangutans roaming that area, right? So that being said, it just doesn't seem to reason. Most animals are cautious. They're not going to like try to on purpose be an antagonist to start something with you, especially with this instinct. Most animals they want to preserve themselves, stay alive. If you ever see a buck with a real big rack, huge rack, that buck is that old for a reason, because they're smart. Yeah, they're not that big because they're just coming up to people, right? No, they're smart.
Exactly.
That's right. They got adaptive abilities. So when I hear stuff about the rocks and the pine cones, I've heard stories like that too. So I think maybe it's just a warning, or they're just trying to keep their space, or maybe they're just trying to size you up, like to see what's going on with you. But the thing about the rifles, animals are so freaking smart. They see something like that, it's like they just know. So I have deer that come on my lot, and as long as I'm standing there, they'll be eating the corn. They'll be grazing. I put water out for them, especially when we had that drought. We've been getting a lot of rain now, but they'd be out there. As long as I'm just standing and observing, they're fine. The moment I pick up my camera like this,
Gone.
yeah, because they think maybe he's gonna do something to us. Yeah, boom, they're gone. So, anyways, very curious. To me, that definitely, in my opinion, it's back to this behavior that kind of suggests a bit more intelligence or intentional with the behavior, right? It doesn't seem to be as random, right? Throwing cones, tap noises, and then all these other behaviors you hear about in people's testimonies. So yeah, that's got to make it seem a little more scarier when you're out there. It's like, hey, that's because this doesn't seem, like a regular situation happening.
Yeah. And again, if Bigfoot wasn't real, I have nothing to worry about. So not bringing guns has never bothered me.
Yeah.
Because what we have, like you said, we have like wild boar, raccoons. None of that's gonna mess with me.
Yeah, sure. And to kind of like, for people who might be listening to the video, they're going to be like the skeptics to try to rule things out. They're like, well, how do you know it wasn't somebody playing a prank on you, throwing pine cones, or somebody's out there? And I get what people are saying, but in this day and age, I think that would be very foolish, because that's a good way to get yourself shot out in the woods. Or I would dare anybody. No, I'm actually, if you're watching this video, I'm not daring you. Don't do it. But yeah, put a Bigfoot suit on, and go carousing around out in the forest where you got people out there who are gung ho to prove there's a Bigfoot. It's a good way to get yourself shot. In fact, there was a person pranking, doing a prank dressed up as Sasquatch. I believe he got ran over by a car. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He got hit. I was reading about it. So that's a good way to get yourself killed, as a point. So is it possible there might be a knucklehead out there doing something like that? Yeah, it's possible. But if they have half a brain, I don't think that'd be a good idea. Yeah.
For me, at least, I mean, I dare you to find me. You couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'll go in on a main trail, and I'll check the map and make sure that, well, hey, there's 30 miles to the next trail to my east.
Yeah.
I'm going to go that way about 10 of those miles, and I could do a 10-mile hike. You wouldn't find me. You'd have to know exactly where I was, and you'd have to make that journey in the dark.
Yeah.
Because I'd see you otherwise.
That's right.
So I thought about that. I don't think anyone would have found me. I thought about that because of the footprint I found. I thought, well, what was someone doing out here?
Sure.
You couldn't get out there.
Yeah. And you had somebody with you too. So that's, you got two pairs going on, two people. So that helps with your, I call it consensus validity. When it's not just you, you got other people with you. So
I'm glad I did. I think I was crazy.
Yeah. Now, before this experience, I guess, how old were you? Or you don't have to say exactly how old you are, but how long ago was this becoming an emergent thing that you considered the possibility that maybe there is a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch? Because a lot of us, culture, pop culture stuff, movies, on Facebook, I look at the Bigfoot believers posts. Those are, I like to read those, and some people kid around for fun. That's cool. They're just having a little fun in there. But people who are open-minded, in other words, these days you see a lot of that. When I was growing up, there was no Facebook. So if I was at the library, I might see a book about Bigfoot, Yeti, and abominable snowman, right? But you didn't see much of this like we do today. Yeah. So what kind of got your attention about these type of topics?
Well, as a kid, there was really no Bigfoot shows, other than, like Harry and the Hendersons, but there was none
Mhm.
of this
Yeah.
finding Sasquatch. So I think I was about 15 when I first considered it. It's kind of an on and off thing. Went out, I had some weird experience, like you said, a bunch of deer
Mhm.
disappeared, and then we heard something bipedal. And now keep in mind, these are deer that I could literally pet,
Mhm.
gone, and then something bipedal coming out through the forest. That was the first time I laid there in the grass with
Yeah.
my other friend, and I was like, holy crap, Bigfoot, this is Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I don't know what else this is.
Sure.
Then give it like 6 months and I forgot about it, never thought about Bigfoot again until last year
Mhm.
when my second or third encounter happened that was actually dramatic.
Mhm. Now,
And it
and
was
and
20.
your well, in your opinion, how would you estimate the height of the creature you saw? Do you have
I
the best guess?
actually believe I got an accidental photo that morning.
Okay.
What I did was we were leaving, and I was like I said, I kind of wrote it off, whatever. Took a panorama of our camp to show the girls when we get home. This is what we did. When I got home, I was like, wow, what is that on my panorama? That's not a burned tree. And so I went back the next time. I did another panorama on the same spot, and it's just not there. And, right where it was is probably eight, maybe 7.5 feet from the whatever I was looking at the
Mhm.
top of that. Um, And I've seen something hunched over, looked about as tall as a cow, hunched over. So maybe standing up is about 7 feet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's basically what I can go off of
Sure.
until I'm right there in front of it face to face.
Yeah. And when you look at like a bipedal type of primate or just creature, yeah, it's very plausible to me because people say, oh, maybe it's a brown bear standing up. You've heard that people try to write it off to that. But the thing is, we have human beings these days. It's very clear that or have been 7+ feet tall. So we know humanoids, human beings, Homo sapiens can be
Mm-hmm.
over 7 foot tall. So to me, that kind of lends more plausibility or believability to the possibility that people, when they see a bipedal entity, that they can't rule it out. They can't say it's some, hey, that's obviously not a bear. It's not, something that makes sense or registers. So by default, it's at least an unidentified bipedal creature, right? AKA, we can call it Bigfoot, Sasquatch. So yes, to me, this is plausible that you could have a bipedal creature well over 7 foot. We've even had a man in history close to 8 foot tall. I think the
Yeah.
Guinness Book of World Records, tallest guy I think was close to 8 feet, or maybe if not there. So yeah, that to me is plausible. But the thing that really blows my mind is that in these instances, you're dealing with a creature that's robust, muscular, big. Because human beings that can be that tall, yeah, they can be athletic. I mean, look at the NBA, right? You got
Mm-hmm.
basketball players that are close to 7 foot, 6'10", 6'11". I think it's actually an Asian guy who's over 7 foot tall, right? But
Yeah.
he's kind of lanky though. He's not like super built. So humans can be that tall, but they don't carry that kind of mass, right? Like what's described as Bigfoot. Because I've heard a lot of descriptions about Bigfoot. I've never heard one that says that where they describe Bigfoot as scrawny and puny, right? He's
No.
always big. Yeah. So
Yeah. I think, I mean, you'd have to be to take down wild game because I know out here we have an abundance of
yeah,
beauty berries and rattlesnake root, blackberries. There's a lot to forage,
yeah,
but to sustain a muscle mass, you'd have to, and luckily there's plenty of them, probably have wild boar,
yeah.
deer,
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah.
know.
That's a good
Um,
point. Because you reminded me of something is about the assumptions things, right? So some people might assume Sasquatch Bigfoot would be a vegan, right? He only eats plants and vegetables.
mhm.
And you'll see people who are ignorant, they'll show the chimpanzee eating a banana, right? Look at that
Yeah.
chimpanzee eating a banana and he's all, look at his muscles. The truth is a tribe or a pack of chimpanzees eats several hundred pounds of monkey meat every year. They murder and kill those little rhesus or small tree monkeys, the small ones, and they will chase them. You can go on YouTube, Nat Geo. I actually have a video on my other channel in response to this vegan guy about what about chimpanzees, because chimpanzees are murderous bastards. They murder freaking small monkeys, and they'll literally just start biting into them while the monkey's alive. They don't even kill them first, you know.
Well, have you heard of the Billy's apes? The chimpanzees and the Billy's apes?
Yeah.
They used to call them the lion killers.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they were you know, they would eat jaguars.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a photo of a chimpanzee up in a tree, and it has a like a deer type creature. Maybe it was a deer, zebra, or something like that. So several things go through my mind when I'm looking at this photo. That chimpanzee was strong enough to carry that animal up in the tree, and then he's up there literally just eating it, right? He's a carnivore, flesh eater, right? So yeah, is it possible Bigfoot, you know, because a lot of people say, how do they sustain themselves? Well, I guess they'd have to have a capacity for catching animals, which leads me to this. How does something that big hunt other game, right? Well, look at how big a brown bear is, right? And they obviously catch stuff and kill it all the time. Yeah, they get the salmon and the river and stuff, but I imagine they kill other stuff too, right? So
one thing we have in Florida is extremely large gators.
Yeah.
And they're not very fast when they're sitting up on shore. They're also very linky and awkward. Big ones tire out very quickly.
Yeah.
You kill one alligator and have 500 pounds of meat.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And it's not even that hard as long as they're on shore.
Yeah, that's right. So sure, I guess Bigfoot could kill himself a gator, right? I'm
I don't sure. Speculation, but I don't see why not.
Well,
if we could do it.
Yeah,
I'm sure anything could.
Well, chimpanzees will use small sticks to poke them into ant mounds as tools to get ants, and they'll eat them. So we know chimpanzees will utilize or make tools, right? So if we're assuming Sasquatch is smarter than a chimpanzee, then yeah, perhaps they make something to hunt with or kill with. I see photos like on the Bigfoot Believers page and other ones. I see it a lot. It's almost like a teepee-like structure of sticks, and they find them out in the woods.
Yeah.
And they'll say it doesn't make any sense. So the theory is that Sasquatch makes certain structures. What's your opinion about that? I actually asked a question on one of those posts. I said, I was curious, what's people's opinions? What's the purpose for these structures? I mean, it's not like they're trying to make a shelter, I don't think, because it's not very well insulated, just sticks. Yeah, what do you think's going on with that?
Well, the sticks, I mean, could be a matter of anything. I know in my area, one of the common things is Seminole Indians in Florida would use directional markers using saplings. And I've found those here, big 4-inch saplings bent deliberately, and they keep growing, even though they're all the way on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the structure goes, it could be a directional marker. It's also something very easy to fake depending on where it's at.
Yeah.
I have yet to run into one of those personally, other than, tree breaks in a row, which is very deliberate. Haven't come across a structure. Then again, here, but they might not even need structure. If it's just for shelter, I mean, we have cypress trees here that are almost like 10 feet at the base and totally hollow. Yeah. And maybe there's no need for it where I'm at. British Columbia, maybe there is.
Yeah. I heard a theory from actually this older gentleman. He's passed away, but he was convinced, and he was part of this membership thing, or like they were members of this group. And this was before the internet was like as popular or big of a thing it is now. He believed the abominable snowman on the polar caps, that basically that they live in the earth, the hollow earth theory, right? So he believed that they were like the guardians of the portal or the opening into the earth, right? So there's a lot of people. Of course, you'll see this in films and movies sometimes. I think it's the Mummy Returns with what's his name, Brandon Fraser. when he was young. It was one of those mummy movies where he's
got the
yeah,
Yetis.
and there's like abominable snowman that are guarding the entry or the sacred place, whatever. So yeah, people have all kinds of beliefs. Definitely part of our culture, our lore. How much is based in something that's tangibly real, and then it's becomes made into much more than it is, versus where is that threshold, and what is that actual reality, right? I guess that'll be the debate and discussion about what this phenomenon is, what people see and stuff. And I guess until, to use the term smoke and gun, until maybe Sasquatch, maybe he or she's interviewed on Good Morning America someday, right? And today Sasquatch comes out of hiding, right?
Yeah.
What's the meme? They call it the hide and seek champion. You'll see those memes about Bigfoot, but yeah. So people kind of, I think, use humor a lot to cope with things they don't always understand. And just to be clear, I use humor sometimes too, but it doesn't mean that I don't believe in stuff. I believe in a lot of things, but I also have a sense of humor about stuff too, because life, to me, life, it helps to have a sense of humor about stuff. It keeps it interesting, right? I mean, there's jokes about UFOs. I mean, who blames them for not making contact with us, right? Maybe they see our planet and they drive on by. We're like the bar. You know how like in the city you have the bad part of town that people avoid, like in a city. Maybe we're like the bad part of the galaxy that they kind of, hey, don't you got to be careful when you go there at night, right?
And it could be, that's what makes it funny.
Yeah. So anyways, well, I appreciate your time, Taylor. You're the first person that I've done an interview with about Bigfoot, Sasquatch on my channel. So congratulations. And so I'm going to start a playlist where I hopefully get to interview more people about their thoughts, beliefs, ideas about Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And so maybe in the future, you want to talk about something else, paranormal or existential or something like that. Hey, I'm always
talk about this again too, depending on
right. Well, you might have, that's right. You might have more experiences, or if you got any photos of some of those things you run into, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'll send you an email with one of my panoramas and you can see it.
Yes, sir.
Blurry Sasquatch.
All right, there you go. And if you have anything you want to share or say about yourself, if you want to, you can do it now before we finish up the video. And again, I appreciate your time.
Well, I would just give a little bit of advice to anyone who has a suspected encounter. It's, don't let fear get the best of you. I would stay calm. The only reason I've had the encounters I've had is because I decided I wasn't going to leave and see what happened, and it worked out. And who knows what the future holds.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you. And I hope you have a good rest of the weekend, Tyler. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.